Hey, I'm Nathan Johnson, London's best personal trainer, and I'm all in on being the Gora that helps South Asians navigate getting in shape and staying in shape forever. And we're in for episode 1 of Gora the Explorer, in which we're going to talk about foodie versus a fatty. Now, in this scenario with the South Asian community, there is a relationship and an identity between I am a foodie. I love food, and this can be quite problematic, but also amazing too, right? Just imagine that food has been ever present in every single part of your life, from everything from good celebrations to bad celebrations, to Diwalis, to Christmases, to birthdays. There's always food. And even when you go around someone's house, there's food too. It's seen as a negative thing not to offer food to people when they go around your house. When people come around my house, you get a cup of tea. You don't get the doctors, the chevro. You don't get whatever's being cooked on that day to express love, gratitude, and actually like have someone care for you, right? So there's always been this upbringing from a cultural perspective of food is everything. Food is life. And you become classified as a foodie. The problem with becoming a foodie is that your identity is in food. You probably have less hobbies, you have less things to do outside of food, and you always look forward to that next meal coming past, what you're doing, where you eating, what taste are we having, the sensations, who's cooking it, what we're doing. And there's always this high emotive toll towards food. And almost like in the sense of me being a personal trainer for 12 years, I have to talk people off the ledge of being this emotional creature with food. And they have to become a person that can objectively think good and bad decisions logically around food, as opposed to everything just being simply, oh my God, food, I can't stop myself, I'm a foodie. Now, I always use the term, are you a foodie or are you a fatty? Because there is a distinguishing factor between like gluttonous behavior or too much of something versus something and where you enjoy the food, you enjoy these natures. Now, I classify foodie as someone in which, like a Michelin starred restaurant, right? You go there, small portions, they're not crazy big. They're more about the taste, the sensations, the crisps, the crunch, and they kind of get a lot out of one or two bites, and that kind of be the nature of. Whereas, in my terms, a fatty would be someone that judges their food consumption based on the volume of food that they eat, the amount of stuffness they feel in their stomach, as someone that is over gluttonous for their body, and that you can enjoy food in smaller dosages. But most people have this association with the more food, the more my belly's hurting, the better the dish was. And that's not really food. That's the feeling of fullness. And feeling of fullness versus the taste of the food. You could be a fatty off lettuce and get that stomach hurting massively. But on the other side, you can never be a foodie around lettuce because it only tastes of one thing, and that's, shit, I hate lettuce. Now, when it comes to the distinguishing factors, foodie is that nature of I can't control myself around this, or I've been upbringing around where there's lots of food and it's become this association. And when you're trying to break that, when you're trying to be in a scenario where you have an experience with food, but it doesn't determine your value at the end of the week with your fat loss, your gains that you've got, because one is normally associated without the word that you can't be a foodie in being amazing shape. It's looked at as like two polar opposites. But let me give you an example. When I was at a wedding in Mangalore and Udupi, I really got my first taste of understanding the associations of food and also the associations of textures, tastes, flavors, and profiles within the Indian community, and how putting things together make things taste amazing. And you can get a lot out of these things, and redefining your terms of what foodie is. And that will help you on your fitness goals when you disassociate that being a foodie means the volume of food that you eat. And one of my biggest sayings for people that want to stay in shape forever, and one of our coaches, Sirish, who used to be a client of mine, orthopedic surgeon in New York, he lives in Washington, is now one of our coaches. I taught him one great skill, which was that get the most from the least. Because he was a foodie too. He loved his food. He loved the things that he was having. He liked the dynamics of lots of food, mum's cooking, auntie's cooking, that type of stuff. And when I showed him, like, great, you're in amazing shape now, but you've got to keep it. And the way that you keep being in shape is not having this more. I get this on my comments all the time. 2 spoonfuls of rice is not enough. Or you're not worked with enough Indians to know that you can't have 3 spoonfuls of rice. But the reality is like their beliefs and behaviors and traits of people that are not in amazing shape or struggle to be in shape every single day and do drastic things to get there. So getting the most from the least is one of the most important tools if you are a foodie that you need to learn to be a foodie and not be a fatty at the same time. So what you do is you savor the things that you enjoy. You don't expect more. With the nature of how South Asians eat, and like I was the same, is we eat fast. If you're eating with your hands, you've got that next mouthful already prepared. If you're eating with a knife and fork, you're already preparing the next bite before you get it in, and it's never leave your hands. So you always have this moment with the next bite, next bite, the next bite, the next bite, the next bite. And that can become really non-enjoyable. Gratitude, embracing the moment, all of this like wanky stuff that you can hear is actually all about making sure that in the moment that you're actually savoring the bite that you have. It's in very much Ayurvedic practices of nourishing the body in a way that you need to, and slowing down and eating very slowly actually gets you the most out of it. So if you're struggling to be a foodie without being a fatty, slow down your eating, put your knife and fork down at every single mouthful and chew like 20, 30 times. I guarantee you eat half the amount that you were doing before, but you actually enjoy it more. And the reason why you will enjoy it more is because you disassociate from fullness in your belly and actually enjoy the mouth sensation that goes on with the Indian and South Asian cuisine. Chevro is a perfect example of an amazing dish. That's not a dish, I call it a dish because it's my favorite, is where you have the crunch, you have the spicy, you have the sweet, you have the different textures and flavors that can offer you an amazing sensation. But instead of actually thinking about how lovely this chevro tastes, you're already thinking about the next mouthful. You're already thinking about what I can have next, or let me get another bout of that. Let me get another hit of that. And that can become the problematic area of distinguishing between a foodie and a fatty. Let me also bring you back to the point of food does not get better the more mouthfuls that you have of it. Sure, if you change profiles, go from sweet to savory, you can almost game the system a bit with your digestive system. And that's what like competitive eaters do, or people that do the food challenges. They go between sweet food, then savory, sweet, savory, because your taste buds and your nervous system don't recognize that as fullness, and you end up swapping between them, and it can be really useful. But if you're eating the same food over and over again, you don't get more benefit from it. In essence, everything has an inverted U. So an inverted U, if you're watching this on YouTube or Instagram Live, is like it will reach a peak where after the peak, that food does not taste any better. If you're saying, nah, Nathan, you're full of shit, it's just that you haven't ate slow enough and you haven't recognized how much you eat to have this conversation. Because everyone I've sat down with in the last 12 years that I helped get in shape and stay in shape forever within the South Asian community will go through this moment where they actually see a U-bell curve of like the pack of Doritos, right? The Doritos does not get better. The last bite is not infinitely better than the first. There is a point where you eat, you bite, you chew, and the flavor of the hot, spicy Doritos, that the ones are my favorite, you'll reach a point where they don't get any better. It's just the same. The spice is the same, the taste is the same, the crunch is the same, but you're eating it now for eating its sake. You've opened a share bag, and that's different than being a foodie. A foodie would put the food down. Now they've experienced this great taste, and the fatties would then continue eating that food because it's not finished off. The Doritos are not done and dusted. The bag is not finished, and therefore it's not completed task yet. So therefore, there is an element in where you have to disassociate those things and know that the bell curve of food never gets better the more that you eat of it, when you're looking at the logics of food. Now, within the community, logic has not been a present place within food, right? It's always in joyous emotion, occasion. That's why there's a large amount of emotional eating that goes into the South Asian community, because food has been that thing. It is that thing that solves the problem, or short-term solves the problem, in inverted commas. And therefore, it is always an emotional decision to have food like this and to overconsume on these variables. My job is to bring a little bit of logic into this, which is like, does it feel any better to have any more food? Do your problems go away if you eat more food? Does your experience of a foodie get better the more mouthfuls that you have? And is it conducive for you to always have more of what you want versus what your body wants and what your goals are? And that's where we start distinguishing the playing patterns between who makes success long-term in their habits towards their fat loss goals, their getting in shape, and most importantly, staying in shape, and then who actually doesn't get the results that they want to, and they end up gaining their weight back, constantly yo-yo dieting, can't stick to a diet because they're not disciplined. And it comes down to these decisions around how they interact with food. And I'm going to do more episodes on interactions with food, because food is like, because it's everything, it's also recognized and not categorized into particular areas. Foodie versus fatty is the first area that you want to categorize yourself and objectify and logically look at your decisions that you're having. Are you making food decisions for the pleasure and the taste of the food? Or are you making decisions to fill a hole in your stomach because you're sad, unhappy, you had a stressful week, or you want to reward yourself? And the second part will be looking at who is around when you're having that food and who gave it to you and who's making that food. They all become a massive curveball. We all know Indian and South Asian mums and how they are when they're making you food, and then the dynamics that come around this. So we'll dissect that into another topic. But if you want some tips from me on how to navigate this whole area of foodie versus fatty, is that it has to come down to the distinguishing factor between I don't know if you've ever heard this saying, that my dad used to say it all of the time, which is, your eyes are bigger than your belly, son. Your eyes are bigger than your belly. And I wonder where I got that from. Him, the man who used to eat a pack of biscuits after work one day with a cup of tea, the guy who would have takeaway 3 times on a weekend. I got it from him. It just doesn't run in the family after all. No one runs in the family. And when you're looking at the element of that, where food, when the direction that you're pulled in is emotional, and your direction that you pulled in is not logical, you can get twisted with how you perceive food to be. And the course correction that you'll need to make is going to be dissecting whether your body needs it or it's just your eyes. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. But like your eyes are different to what your body needs. There'll be a point, and most people don't understand this. If you're a yo-yo dieter, or you've been on diets all of the time, going from extremely hungry to extremely fed because you're eating whatever the fuck you want to eat, and you're going through periods of this, you will not know what quote unquote your body needs. And let me define to you what your body needs so that you can understand whether you're doing this or you're not. You need to recognize when you're not hungry and when you're hungry. And being hungry for some people is not true hunger. So for example, like I ask my clients, oh, why did you eat that extra chocolate bar? And they're like, oh, because I was hungry. And I'll be like, okay, show me what hunger means. And they're like, I was a bit tired. That's not hunger. I needed a pick me up. Not hunger. Oh, I felt I needed a reward. Not hunger. And then you get slowly and surely to the root cause of it, and it nothing to do with hunger. And actually, classifications of hunger mean that your stomach is rumbling and that you've got stomach pains that are in rotation of a cycle that go away and come back. And if you're not getting those two things, you're not hungry. So most people, and I say this, most people from the South Asian community that I've worked with have not been hungry. Ever. They've always been fed. And even when they thought they were hungry, they weren't really hungry. They just needed a pick me up or something extra to have, or they were bored or procrastinating, or someone offered them food. That's a different story than being hunger. So when you can determine what hunger is, so that pitted feeling in the stomach when it feels empty, and at the same time is your stomach is hurting and painful and rumbling. If you ain't got those two things, you're not. So then your decision around when to stop eating or when you are deciding to eat becomes a whole different ballgame versus every other decision that you've made or why you think you're in that situation. So when you're eating, how do you decide if it's your eyes versus your belly that need the nourishment and how to stop? And the thing around that is understanding that, it's in Ayurvedic practices, it's in mindful practices, it's in your general practices of how to eat without tracking on calories or, eat following a meal plan. It all comes down to, am I not hungry right now? Am I 80% full? And is my stomach 80% full? Not my brain. And then when that is there, that's how much your body needs. In that moment in time, your body is relative to how much volume it has in the stomach. It's giving you those signs to say, hey, actually, you don't need any more. But we continually override that by our eyes and our excitement around food and our emotional capabilities around food, that we end up just overdoing it and never truly feel those things. So one of the best things you can do if you're a foodie is start looking at the pinpoint of where you're going over based on your own excitement, emotional waiver. Because what you can do is you can go, actually, yeah, I bet slowly, I bet my meal or whatever I was having, my fucking, my paneer curry, my roti and dal, my chevro. And now I'm not hungry. So therefore I don't need to continue eating. And then at that moment in time where you have that moment, if you continue to eat, it's not because you're filling your hunger. It's because you're eating because you're either gluttonous, because you're just, you're in that emotional state, or you clearly don't care about the goals that you have for your body because your body's giving you a sign and symptom and saying, hey, bro, cut it out. We don't need any more. And that's the first sign and symptom of detaching away from an identity of food and moving towards more of a general premise of actually eating, not like an asshole or like don't eat like your parents. It's going to be somewhere along the way you picked up this foodie behavior, and it can be cultural, it can be family, it can be your spouse and the excitement that you get around these, or it could be the label that you've created for yourself when you've failed on diets and you just I can't stop eating because I'm a foodie. It's like, no, you can't stop eating because you enjoy food and you don't know how to stop. Yeah, that's a different ball game. No, if you have an identity of being a foodie, it's really hard to break. Like I used to be a quote unquote a big eater. So my big thing was I'm a big eater. So I'd look at a menu, I'd look for the biggest thing on the menu. I'd eat more than everybody else at the dinner table because I'm this big eater. And you do see this in people that are above 100 kilos, mainly guys who have the identity of being the big lad, of the guy who gets the most, packs the most pints away, packs the most food away, eats everybody and has that identity of that boss guy who likes that appearance. And that's your identity in your group of friends. And let's say, for example, if 4 of your friends, those things, they would be doing their own thing and you would have that identity. Whereas if you take away the identity of being a foodie or being a big eater, which I had to learn to do, you're just left with a person that is trying to act a certain way for social experience or social ranking or climbing that ranking ladder or value or not knowing your own true identity as opposed to the the adoption of food. So when you can create and take away the identities, you can actually be in a lot more powerful position. So instead of being a foodie, you're someone who enjoys food probably more than they should do for their goal. And then it doesn't have any power over you. It means that you can solve it. Because I haven't met anybody over 12 years that has been a quote unquote foodie that hasn't broke that and stayed in shape. And I've worked with a lot of people, like we're talking like 1,000+ South Asian people, is they always don't listen. Yeah, I'm a foodie. I'm a foodie. I'm a foodie. Okay, cool. Just wait until, we go into maintenance. Just wait until we do the anti-yo-yo phase. Just wait until we're doing the lifestyle side of things. And they don't learn the lessons and they wonder why they struggle when they gain their weight back, is because in those scenarios where they just followed their diet for 12 weeks and they gain it back because they haven't changed anything at the core of their habits, their systems, their beliefs. Like reality is like when we work with the South Asian community, when I work with the South Asian community, it's yes, we adopt the process of help eat mum's food and traditional food and whatever food you like and be more structured and portion side with your approach. But it's actually about the mindset of you not gaining this weight back, because there's one thing worse than not losing weight. It's actually losing it and then gaining it back again. You've got two separate wardrobes. I fucking hate it. So I'd prefer not to do that. So the way that you do that is that you solve those things that are going to come and bite you in the arse later. The elements of, I'm a foodie, I can't control myself around food. It's like, yes, you can. You just choose not. And it's hard. And once you get over that barrier, and look, I'm not a foodie. I'm just someone who enjoys food a lot and I struggle to stop around it. You can solve that because that's a problem to solve. Whereas an identity, no one can tell you nothing when you've got an identity. No one could tell me nothing when I was like, I'm a foodie. I'm a big eater. I'm the biggest eater around. I wasn't listening to anybody. I wasn't in an environment to change my mindset. And that can become very problematic if you've got an identity. That's why, football teams become tribal. It's why things like wars become very, very, very problematic, is because people have identities of certain things. And when those identities are challenged, that becomes the issue. So we don't want to have an identity around food. We just want to have problems that we face that we struggle to work with, and then we work around them. That's the key construct of that. And that's really food versus fatty. The steps that I would take to navigate are going to be, understanding when you're actually hungry versus not. Understanding that food doesn't get better as you go along the platform of eating the same, and just actually working backwards and going, this didn't get any better after this point. My third bao bun or my third roti, it doesn't get any better after this point in my face around the taste, the texture, the sensations. Doesn't make me feel any better or worse based on that point. You've hit the U curve or the U bend of food enjoyment. And then working towards getting closer to that with your intake is going to teach you a lot about where really your foodie identity is coming from. It's going to be, I'm a foodie, but it's my mum shoveling 2 plates of rice on the dinner table. That's not a foodie. That's just your mum. You being pressured by your mum. That's a different story altogether. So finding that hunger point, so what really hunger is versus your eyes. And then the last point is, understanding that once you say that you're a live and breathe like that, it becomes a hell of a hard journey to break. So I prefer to look at things logically rather than emotionally. And think of it this way. The ramifications of being this foodie is that there will be periods of your week, your month, where you overconsume on food. So the more than likely habit is that you're going to eat food till you're absolutely stuffed, gain a bunch of water weight, try and go back on a diet on Monday, probably fail miserably by Thursday, back to the weekend again where you have more of the enjoyment of food again. And then you're round in that cycle of not doing anything, if anything, gaining weight. Whereas people who don't become foodies and they enjoy the limit that they should do and have a strategy during the whole 7, 14, 21 days, they can enjoy food without there being a diet do a diet on a Monday, or they don't have to, do lots of cardio or see the weight spike 3 or 4 kilos and then go and do loads of exercise on top. And most importantly, they don't have to diet in the next 20 years. They can just literally be normal, or be healthy and be happy and be enjoyable of all scenarios, as opposed to getting the most out of one moment and then forgetting about it for 3 or 4 days and then doing the exact same again and then being in that yo-yo dieting cycle because of that. So guys, hopefully you loved Gora the Explorer 001, foodie versus fatty. And we're going to be doing these on a day-to-day basis, Monday to Friday. So stay tuned in on both Instagram live and obviously podcast as well. So thanks for coming on board, and chat to you soon.